Well, last month we looked at a Robin Williams movie and didn't take long to talk about another one. Except this one, while not great, is certainly better than Jack.
What am I? I'm Popeye the Sailor, and I am what I am, what I am, and I am what I am, and that's all that I am, 'cause I am what I am. You got it? I think so, yeah. And I've got a lot of muscle, and I only got one eye.
Looking for the father who deserted him as a baby, a sailor named Popeye, played by Robin Williams, journeys to the port town of Sweethaven. Popeye befriends an assortment of eccentrics and falls in love with Olive Oil, played by Shelley Duvall, who already has a suitor in the form of bully Bluto. Popeye also discovers an abandoned baby Sweet Pea, whom he raises as his own. But when the spurned Bluto kidnaps Olive and the child, Popeye takes action with the help of his magic spinach. Now, for the sake of this video, very similar to last year when I talked about show dogs, I'm mostly going to be talking about one movie, but I did find a couple of other Popeye movies that I want to briefly talk about later on in the video, but for the most part we're going to be talking about the 1980s Robert Altman movie. When I first heard about the live-action Popeye movie, I remember it was featured in a trailer on a bunch of old Nickelodeon tapes. I think the trailer was called like Paramount Family Favorites, and they would show a bunch of these different movies that Paramount either made or owned the rights to. And I remember them showing a little bit of Popeye in that montage.
Hello, sunshine, goodbye, rain. She's wearing my school ring on a chain. She's my steady, I'm her man. I'm gonna love her all I can.
And as a kid, I only barely knew what Popeye was. So it was one of those things that just kind of floated around in the back of my mind, and then eventually the older I got, I was like, oh yeah, there's that live-action Popeye movie. And, you know, now, jump forward, there are people that are doing videos about it and talking about it, like Red Letter Media and a bunch of other people have talked about it. And it seems like the general consensus is it's either so bad it's good, or people saying that, like, well, the production was impressive. It's, you know, it's very noble that they tried making a movie based on the character and that they at least put some effort into it. It's not a very good movie, but it's commendable that they tried. So I was curious about it, and I decided to watch it for myself, and overall, I think that's a very good way of saying it. It's very commendable that they tried, and it's certainly better and closer to its source material, I guess, compared to other live-action cartoon movies that would come out later in the decade, like fucking Masters of the Universe. But that being said, I feel like you have to be a diehard Popeye enthusiast to really appreciate this movie, versus me as someone who only just knows the bare essentials of Popeye. And I feel like this movie, it's a little too weird for its own good. Again, unless you're a diehard Popeye head, in which case you're like, oh yeah, they were following the lore and the continuity perfectly, versus someone like me who's just a filthy casual. And I just saw this movie as like, alright, well, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but I really don't know what to say. I really don't know how to make heads or tails of this one. The reason this movie exists is because Columbia were the ones that picked up the rights to Annie, and that was originally based on a comic strip. So Paramount scrambled to try and find any kind of old comic strips that they could either get the rights to cheap or ones they already had the rights to. And of course, they just happened to have the rights to Popeye, and they were like, all right, well, we'll show Columbia, you know, that they can have their successful musical based on a comic strip. We can do it too. How hard could it be? Now, unlike a lot of other cartoons, like the Masters of the Universe movie, where it's, oh, let's just take beloved cartoon characters and put them in modern day New York or California or whatever, and there's a whole fish out of water story going on where they don't know modern technology and shit. They don't go for that. This time, they actually do try to stay close to source material. The plot of the movie is you have Popeye, who's a sailor who rolls into the harboring town of Sweethaven because he's looking for his father, Poop Deck Pappy. And so he rolls into town, and this is a town where they don't take kindly to strangers. But Popeye proves himself because he goes around doing a bunch of tasks and proving that he's a good guy. And, well, this town of Sweethaven, it's basically under the I don't know, the iron fist, I guess you could say, of Bluto, who is of course the arch rival of Popeye, the big brooding man who is in a relationship with Olive Oil, played by Shelley Duvall, who I gotta say, like, people could say what they want about Robin Williams, because this was Robin Williams' first big film. Like, this is his first feature that he ever did. Before this, he was only known for episodes of Happy Days and Mork and Mindy. And I gotta say, while it's not the best Robin Williams performance, he actually doesn't do a terrible Popeye impression.
What am I? Some kind of judge or lawyers? Maybe not, but I knows what law suits me. Careful they don't ruffle me feathers.
That being said, the best performance in the movie easily goes to Shelley Duvall. Shelley Duvall was, like, unbelievably perfect as Olive Oil. Like, I cannot stress enough, she actually captured her mannerisms surprisingly well.
I don't see why I have to do anything on the day before my engagement party when nothing's ready, especially me. And what kind of name is that anyway? Popeye. Pretty strange.
While trying to get away from Bluto, Popeye and Olive Oil sail out of town for a little bit, and they come across a baby, which they decide to take care of, and they nickname the baby Sweet Pea.
I am calling him Sweet Pea, and that is his name. Ain't that the truth?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, Sweet Pea's about the worst name I ever heard on a baby.
Well, what do you want me to call him? Baby Oil?
Anyway, of course you're going to have it that Popeye and Olive Oil end up falling for each other, which pisses off Bluto something fierce. A bunch of other stuff happens between the third act. You establish the baby has, like, psychic abilities, and you also have it that somebody in Olive Oil's family has to get into the ring and fight to get a large sum of money, and Popeye ends up jumping in, and of course, since he's Popeye, he ends up winning the fight. A little confusing because there are several times where he just gets into fights with people, and of course, since he's Popeye, you know, strongest human being alive, according to this movie, he's able to do it like nothing. But then there are scenes where he has to go up against Bluto and he can't do it. I don't know. Third act, you have it that Bluto is so pissed off that Olive Oil is now with Popeye, so he decides to kidnap her and the baby, and random, he's after treasure. They almost never touch on that throughout the whole movie, but you know, in this third act, they also try to rush out. Oh yeah, by the way, he's trying to find this treasure. Okay. Popeye goes after them, but then he ends up coming across Poop Deck Pappy, and you know, he finally found his father, who also turns out to be the one who was originally in charge of Sweethaven until Bluto basically, you know, forced him out.
I'm your one and only X-Spring. See, we got the same bulgy arms.
No resemblance.
We got the same squinky eye.
What squinky eye?
So it's here where Popeye gets his iconic spinach, and he finally goes up against Bluto, which very anticlimactic. It just results in one punch, and then he's done. No, as anticlimactic as that main fight between the hero and villain was, I gotta say, I do appreciate the fact this movie confirmed that Popeye was basically the original One Punch Man.
Aw, man. The scrap's always so expensive. No thanks.
I can't stand no one bad-mouthing me spinach.
He also goes up against an octopus, which I guess that was like a thing in the cartoon. Like, I guess that was like the big, bad, scary sea monster that nobody tangled with except for, of course, good old Popeye. But the problem is, the octopus looks so fucking fake. It looks like something Ed Wood would have in one of his movies. That's basically it. Poop Deck Pappy is put back in charge of Sweethaven. Bluto is defeated by Popeye, and they sing the Popeye theme song, which that's the other thing, going along with what I said earlier and how this was trying to cash in on Annie. They made this a musical, and most of the songs, I mean, they're not god-awful or anything, but I wouldn't say they're as memorable as the songs that are in Annie. I mean, there's a reason that you remember a lot of the songs from Annie, and there are songs in this where it's just like, it's not terrible, but meh.
He's large. Large.
think another problem with this movie is the fact that it's a Robert Altman film, and it's not to say that Robert Altman is a bad director, because he's directed a bunch of classics. He did Nashville and the MASH movie, and the thing is, those movies, when he was at his height with movies like that, those were movies that were very loosey-goosey, and they let the actors improv and just riff off of each other a lot. Then you get to the later half of the 70s, and his career slowly started taking a tumble, and then you get to this movie, which didn't make money at the box office, but it did make money in home video sales. And I think he was trying to sort of bring that kind of energy with his classic movies to this one, because there's a lot of people just riffing off of each other and people just talking, just endless noise.
Haul ass, get that. They're on the bio body. Come on.
In some scenes that actually works, like the scene where Olive Oyl takes Popeye to meet her family for the first time. You got this kind of chaotic scene of this large family sitting around. It's very well choreographed. You got them all just talking over each other, and someone will get up, somebody will sit down. There's a lot of moving around in the kitchen. I like that. I thought that was one of the few times in the movie it worked.
Oh, Mr. I, have you met Pop, Mr. Wimpy, my son Castor, Mr. Giesel, my husband Cole? We're all one big happy family here, although not really.
And there are other times where it's just endless amounts of noise, and not in a way that's super annoying, but it does get distracting after a while because it just feels like nobody's gonna shut up. It's really ironic because there's a song in the movie where
Give them candy and a lot of toys, and what do you get back? You get a lot of noise. Na 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 na.
it felt like, holy shit, that's how I feel as an audience member. But like I brought up at the beginning of the video, I will admit, the one thing that I did think was genuinely impressive, the practical effects, they're decent for the most part. It is pretty unnatural, the fact they try to give Robin Williams these big growths on his arm to replicate Popeye. I felt bad for him having to do the Popeye voice throughout the whole thing. He has to talk with a corncob pipe out the side of his mouth the whole time. And so it's it kind of hinders his dialogue. And it really shows because a lot of his dialogue was ADR'd later.
Never seen a room done an early demolition before, but this'll do for me.
Nothing goes on this bed.
Oh, sorry, man, it's just some...
What's that lamp?
But like I said at the beginning of the video, I think the best thing in this movie is easily the set design. Because that whole town they built from scratch with 200 people working on it. And I gotta say, they actually did a really good job making it look like a real harbor town. They had a very lived-in look to it. They built the sets so that, not only could they do exterior shots, but they also built them to film inside of them as well. So it's not just oh, you're filming on a soundstage for the indoor segments, and then outside it's all this, stuff they built for the movie. And unlike something like Waterworld, which was constantly plagued with production trouble, not to say that this wasn't, but unlike that movie where several times the set practically ended up underwater, this is actually still standing as far as I can tell. I think it's they had it somewhere in Malta, and yeah, I think it's still there. I think it's some kind of tourist attraction, and they advertised that, oh, it was originally part of the live-action Popeye movie. So yeah, that's pretty impressive, the fact that it's still standing and they didn't just tear it down after all that work. Overall, as a movie itself, there's a few good performances in it. Maybe one or two of the songs I liked. They kind of stuck out to me. And I feel like if you are a Popeye fan, this would definitely appeal to you more. But again, as someone who didn't really grow up watching a lot of the Popeye cartoons, it's just a fine movie, I guess. It's not the worst thing I've ever sat through. It's not even the worst Robin Williams movie I've seen. This was certainly more watchable than Jack and Old Dogs. Holy crap, those are still terrible. But at the same time, it's a live-action Popeye movie that's almost 2 hours long. That's the other thing. It does have a crushing length. It's not the worst thing ever. There are some things that keep it from being completely unwatchable, but it's not one of Robert Altman's best movies. It's not one of Robin Williams' best. It's just kind of a movie that sort of exists. It just kind of floated around for the longest time until recently Popeye's been reevaluated, and you do have people coming out in defense of it. And it's funny, even the people who make videos saying that oh, it's not that bad, that they still point out that yeah, the movie's runtime is a little long, and it's weird that some of the subplots just kind of come and go, and it is just a lot of constant noise. So, yeah, I mean, like, I feel like if you know all of that going into the movie and you're aware that this stuff is present, maybe it won't be as bad. You know, since I was watching it firsthand, not really knowing of what the movie was going into it, that was all kind of jarring. But again, it's far from a god-awful movie. It's certainly watchable if you're willing to put up with its length. So, yeah, that's all that really needs to be said about the live-action Popeye. But we're not stopping there. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some other Popeye movies. Not just the crappy horror films. We're going to get to those in a second. But I wanted to address there were two other Popeye movies that were animated. Well, one was anyway. There was one that came out for, I think it was some kind of anniversary for the character. It went straight to video, and it really shows because the animation looks like something from the cutscenes of a PlayStation 2 game.
Bluto, set a course for shipwreck rock in the Sea of Mystery.
But there are sirens and sea serpents and monsters there. It's the Sea Hag's realm.
I can't believe you believe them unbelievable stories, Bluto.
I really can't say anything about this movie because I didn't watch it. I just watched the trailer. But watching the trailer, I was like, oh god, this definitely looks like a straight-to-video CG animated movie from 2004, just based on the animation quality alone. And you get to the other animated Popeye movie that basically never was. You had Sony. Around 2016, they released animation tests on YouTube saying that they were, making a new Popeye movie, and it was going to be directed by, I always get the guy's name wrong, is it Gennady Tartakovsky or Gendy Tartakovsky? The guy that did, like, Samurai Jack and Dexter's Lab and that one Star Wars Clone Wars show. He was going to be in charge of it because he previously worked with Sony on the Hotel Transylvania movies. So he was going to be helming this Popeye movie, but Sony at the last minute went, nobody really cares about Popeye, so they scrapped it, and instead what they went with was the fucking Emoji Movie, which is really sad because rewatching that test animation that they uploaded, it actually looked really good.
Don't worry, Miss Oil, I'll save you.
Save me? Who's gonna save you?
I'll be right with you.
This is all just a dream.
I'm sorry, just taking a little longer than I thought.
I already said that I'm not the world's biggest Popeye guy, but you know what? Like, in terms of animation that looks like it was trying to capture the original spirit of Popeye, they really did a good job. It has a lot of that, like, old school, like, 1930s squash and stretch shit going on. It actually looked like it could be pretty good. But no, Sony fucking scrapped it to make way for the fucking stupid movie where you have to see James Corden and TJ Miller as fucking emojis.
I'm never eating another piece of candy ever again.
High five, don't do it. Don't you do it. It's already been in there once.
You know what? Thank God Sony redeemed themselves with the Spider-Verse movies and a couple of other ones like Mitchell's versus the Machines, because if it wasn't for movies like that, Sony would continue to be a punching bag. But, this is 2016 era Sony we're talking here, and in that case, this is the Sony that put out Emoji Movie, so yeah, what the fuck, Sony? What the fuck? Thank God Gennady Tartakovsky is getting to release his own R-rated animated movie on Netflix. I'm genuinely curious to see what that looks like. That looks like that could be a lot of fun. To end this video off, I wanted to briefly touch on the Popeye horror movies, because that's another reoccurring thing on this channel. We have to talk about these stupid public domain horror movies. Already talked about Grinch isn't even public domain, but the mean one falls into that category. We talked about the Winnie the Pooh horror movies, and I know there are plenty of other ones down the road. I'm probably gonna have to talk about those at some point, but yeah, Popeye went into the public domain sometime last year, and so now they're making these stupid ass horror movies on the character. There's 3 of them at the moment, and I watched 2 of them. So there's Popeye the Sailor Man and Popeye's Revenge. For Popeye the Sailor Man, this movie is one of those generic horror movies that could easily just be anything. Like, this really didn't even need to be a Popeye movie. The plot of it is a group of young people are trying to make a documentary about some urban legend called the Sailor Man, about somebody who, some vengeful spirit that haunts a spinach factory, which they end up doing some sleuthing, and you find out that the spinach became contaminated, and that's why Popeye became a freakish mutant, essentially. And, you know, you got a couple of other characters. You got the obvious douchebag who's, like, abusive to his girlfriend or whatever, who's tagging along with the main characters. And you just know sooner or later that fucker's gonna die.
If she's just doing some school project, then why won't she just pick the phone up?
Oh yeah? What should I do?
She said they're going to be at the old candy factory, right?
Fuck, the movie even begins with, like, a woman being attacked by some muggers who are trying to steal her purse or whatever. And, of course, they all run into this abandoned factory and, you know, well, he kills the muggers and then he kills the woman. And, well, fucking... This is what I'm talking about with, this is just any garden variety horror movie or slasher movie with a few references sprinkled in.
Do you know why the factory closed down 20 years ago? There was a spinach contamination.
The guy didn't even try to do a Popeye voice. It's like, you know what? Fucking give Robin Williams some credit. He at least tried. It's just a guy doing like this gruff, I am what I am. And it's like, okay, it's fucking Popeye if he was Sylvester Stallone, I guess.
You're a monster.
I am what I am.
It feels like, why even bother making it a Popeye movie? Oh, because the character went into the public domain. Gotta cash in. We gotta be the first ones to make this, right? I mean, and every once in a while he does like the horror movie trope where the killer makes one-liners, like he smashes someone's head in with an anchor and he says like, anchors away, or oh, and there's a twist near the end of the movie where it turns out that the main girl, Olivia, it turns out that she was his baby. Because Olivia, I guess, kind of sounds like olive oil. Oh, and when they confront him, you know, they try to have this, like, kind of tender moment, and he says something about, like, you were my sweet pea. And, of course, we end with sequel bait, where obvious secondary antagonist is obvious. You have this suit-wearing CEO guy who wants to tear down the factory so that he can build a parking lot or something. I don't fucking know, but it's, like, it's obvious... Evil businessman is obvious, and of course, you know, he, like, all throughout the movie they keep hinting like, oh, this guy, he's a bad, greedy, fat cat motherfucker, and then at the end of the movie, just when you think that Popeye is dead, when he's obviously not, he ends up killing this guy off, and it's like, oh no, not the evil businessman, not that character.
They're, you know, aware of the charming stories circulating about this place.
I don't believe in ghost stories.
This one sort of falls into the category of the mean one, and that it feels like a really lame-ass parody more than like an actual like, oh yeah, let's actually go through the character's like backstory and try to like capture like a lot of key details from his lore. Fuck all of that. No, let's not do that. Let's just throw in obvious things that the fucking masses are just going to recognize. So there's a part where they walk into a bar and meet up with the girl with the asshole abusive boyfriend. And there's a guy at the bar who's trying to get a cheeseburger and it's supposed to be wimpy. That whole scene is weird because then you get this big exposition dump from this one guy who, he's like some old sailor, and he's like, you know, this town hasn't been the same since that thing came to town or whatever. And it's like, why aren't you having Wimpy do the exposition? Because, you know, Wimpy is like Popeye's best friend as far as I can tell. So wouldn't it make sense to have him be the one that's like recounting all this exposition, not knock off Quint from Jaws over here?
He's not a ghost. The Sailor Man is real.
Guess you could say they were trying to be thematic with like the abusive boyfriend to the bartender girl. Like, I guess you could say he was trying to be sort of like Bluto or whatever. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's a fucking generic horror movie. And holy shit, the only other thing I gotta talk about is the saturation in this movie. I always jump on movies for having like colors just annoyingly oversaturated to the point where they look like Skittles vomit. This movie has the opposite problem. It looks like they tried to desaturate everything.
Oh, is this that Pirate Man thing you were going on about in class?
Sailor Man.
There's like several scenes in the beginning of the movie where it's just people outside of a college campus, and it looks like a fucking knockoff Twilight movie with how pasty everybody looks. As for the other one that I watched, Popeye's Revenge, from the same people that did the Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey movies. Actually, no, I don't think they directed it, but it's from the same distribution company, ITN, which I talked about some of their movies before. You know, not just the Winnie the Pooh ones, but they're also their crappy ripoff of Five Nights at Freddy's. I talked about that, but yeah. So this is theirs, and oh boy, This one really feels like they were just trying to capitalize on not just Popeye going into the public domain, but it really felt like they were just trying to recycle wholesale elements from the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movies. This one even begins with this opening animation that they did in the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movies, where you're explaining Popeye's origin and that he's, you know, he was born with a freakish defect, that being, you know, the big growths on his arm. He was picked on in school a lot, and one thing led to another, and he ended up getting trapped in a burning building, and everybody thought he was dead. But jump forward many years later, and he's attacking people that are coming close to his home.
Yeah, there's nothing down here apart from an abandoned old house.
Yeah, that's Popeye's house, sir. My parents own the place.
It's doing the same thing that a lot of these movies from ITN do, where it's clear that this is made by a bunch of diehard horror nerds. So they start just obligatory referencing and taking elements from other better, more well-known horror movies. Like Popeye's origin in this is basically they just mixed elements of Jason Voorhees' backstory and Freddy Krueger's backstory and just put them together, and oh, it just happens to be Popeye this time.
15 years ago, the little boy they called Popeye drowned.
Other than that, it is a super generic fucking young people, whether it's teens or like kids in their 20s or whatever, going to some kind of abandoned house or some kind of creepy house in the middle of the woods. And of course, Popeye shows up and starts attacking them. And honestly, I mean, the guy who does Popeye in this, they do a little bit more with him as Popeye compared to Popeye the Slayer Man, but it's not saying much. I mean, they barely give him a lot to do. And there's parts where it's like, why? Why is Popeye doing this? There's a part where a girl gets killed by him like running her over with a lawnmower, and it's like, oh yeah, of course, clearly that's something Popeye would do. Lawnmower, that's totally connected to his mythology. And this one has a creepier twist than the other one because, okay, the other movie had the twist that the main girl, Olivia, which sounds like olive oil, you know, she's supposed to be Popeye's daughter. This one, they take it a step further and you have it that there's this girl who's supposed to be olive oil, and then it turns out that, oh, she was Popeye's sister, which is really fucking creepy. It's like, okay, you know, if they're supposed to be brother and sister, I really hope to God they weren't in a romantic relationship, because then that just makes, one, that just takes a shit over many people's childhoods, and two, it's like, okay, that's just disgusting. And also it shows that if that is the case, these people probably didn't even do fucking research. It's weird. Popeye the Slayer Man felt like an Asylum movie, even though it wasn't. And Popeye's Revenge, it felt like an ITN movie to the nth degree. From the opening animation that looked like it was from Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, to just all the just blatant copying and ripping off of much better horror movies. And there was just so much about it that just felt like just another Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey. It's like, all right, this just has this doesn't have any original bones in its body. I hate to say it, but Popeye the Slayer Man was probably better just on the fact that I remembered more from it. Like, don't watch either of them. I mean, Popeye the Slayer Man has just so many scenes that are just dragged out of people wandering around dark hallways in an abandoned factory. And the other one is just so fucking cliche and has acting that, you know, no offense to the actors, but the actors in this movie, they honestly felt like they just picked up a bunch of kids that are like, oh, well, I'm an actor. I act in TikTok videos. Because that's honestly the vibe that I was getting with a lot of these people. They just look like a bunch of like Zoomers that use TikTok, and they're just like, oh yeah, okay, you're in the movie. You know, all you have to do is just run away and have some fake blood thrown on you, while a guy in a admittedly kind of decent Popeye costume comes chasing after you. Including a bunch of stupid romantic melodrama. Yeah, you get to see stupid love triangles, and this person is in love with this person, but they're really in love with someone else, and this person is no longer in love with this person, and it's, yeah, that's the kind of shit you'd expect in a fucking Popeye horror movie, right? And I can't comment on Shiver Me Timbers, because I didn't see that, because fucking, hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. It's like, I'm not watching every single one of these shitty-ass Popeye horror movies.
This film's got sex.
Give me some shiver, baby.
This film's got drugs. And rock and roll.
So at the end of the day, if you're gonna watch a Popeye movie, watch the Robert Altman one. It's not perfect or anything, but I don't know. It's one of those movies, I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad that I was able to finally see it after all these years of it floating around in the back of my memory from that old Paramount Family Favorites commercial. So Yeah, and also it's fucking way better than the stupid horror movies, that's for sure. Still need to watch that straight-to-video animated one. That's probably not very good either, but again, that's still probably better than the fucking horror movies. And apparently there are animatics for the rejected Sony one. I'm curious to see what that looks like, but anyway. Tune in next time to the Blockbuster Show, where we're going to be doing a movie marathon. We're going to be talking about crappy, big-budget Hollywood sequels to some very well-known movies. So we got crappy comedies, we got crappy action movies, we got crappy science fiction. We have the whole shebang. So that's what to expect next time. Until then, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.